Hi, it's Maya here with my March reads and receipts. In these videos, I go through what I read during the month, how I'm doing with my reading challenges, and what my current TBR count is, meaning the number of books that I own that are unread. There will be timestamps in the description for all the books, and my TBR at the start of the month was 61 books. Let's start with the reads. And I'm going to have to start by saying that in March I did not read a single physical book that I own. This is all ebooks and library books. So let's start with A Case of Possession by K.J. Charles. This is the sequel to The Magpie Lord that I read at the end of January, so it is a historical fantasy romance with added horror elements set in Victorian England. In this one, the Lord Crane, Lucian Vaudrey, and the magician Stephen Day have to solve a magical mystery involving murders and giant rats. Cool. And they also have to talk about their relationship and how they want to continue it. Once again, this was a fast read. It was a good fun time with some gory elements added, and I will definitely read the third book and look more into what else K.J. Charles has written. So that was the first book, and then I read 3 novellas. So at the end of last year, I bought 3 novellas in the Into Shadow series, which is like Amazon's dark fantasy collection of ebooks, and I read all of those 3 in March. And I bought those 3 in particular because they are all from authors that I've read from before and enjoyed. And the light is getting really bright in here. So first I read The 6 Deaths of the Saint by Alix E. Harrow, and the description of this says, "The Saint of War spares the life of a servant girl so she can fulfill her destiny as the kingdom's greatest warrior in the short story of love and loyalty." I did enjoy this, even though it had elements that I had encountered in other stories before, so that allowed me to guess quite early what was going on, but thankfully that wasn't the final reveal of the novella. It wasn't the big final revelation, and it just moved on from there and focused more on the character of the warrior and her relationship with her prince and her, like what is called, squire. And I don't necessarily mean like a romantic relationship, don't take like that, but more like thinking about your relationship with how you're serving your prince and things like that. And I had a good time reading it. I really liked the writing style. It was good. I don't really know often what to say about short stories. It was my favorite of the bunch. It was good. I closed the curtains a bit and fiddled with my lighting, so I hope this is good. It's a real nice day outside. But let's move on to the second novel that I read in the series, and that is What the Dead Know by Nghi. And the description of this one says, "A woman posing as a medium who can channel the spirit world comes face to face with the truth." And this is historical fiction set at a girls' school, so there's like these 2 fake mediums having fake seances who travel around the country. This is set in the US, and the fake seance and the ghost theme should have been for me, but for some reason it fell a bit flat for me. I've enjoyed War Singing Hill Cycle, but I wasn't that into this story, or I didn't find the characters super interesting. Like the ghost story was a good ghost story, but I don't think I will remember this story for quite long, sadly. Next I read Undercover by Tamsyn Muir, and perhaps unsurprisingly, this one was my favorite of the bunch. The description says, "A fresh-faced newcomer arrives in an isolated gang-run town and soon finds herself taking a job nobody else wants. A bodyguard to a ghoul." So I don't know what it is about Tamsyn Muir's writing, but she can make me like care about stuff that I wouldn't usually care for. So I was just really on board with this. On the outside, it's a story about like crime families and undercover cops, and that isn't my kind of thing, but I was like so into this. She makes it work. Like I was on board with the main character. I wanted to know what was going to happen. I wanted to learn more about the ghouls, and I really like this. If you have read the other short stories or novellas in this collection, let me know which ones are worth my time and I will check them out. Then from the library I read Into the Riverlands by Nghi, and this was so far my least favorite of the Singing Hill Cycle novella series. I didn't have the greatest Nghi month in March. I don't know why. But this time the cleric Chi and the bird companion, Almost Brilliant, travel into the Riverlands, and they record tales of these like near immortal martial artists who haunt the region, and there's also a group of bandits. And I'm really interested in the wuxia genre, especially in movies, and the xianxia genre more in books. I want to delve more into that. So I was I really liked the martial artist side of this, and I did like all the characters, but I just couldn't get into this. It was maybe because I read it in short chunks, like I couldn't really focus on it. I read it in short bursts, so I couldn't get that into the plot, and I maybe didn't catch all the connections that the stories the characters told had to each other. So I was left with a bit of a hazy recollection of this. Again, it might be just me and the way that I read this, but this wasn't my favorite of the bunch. Then also from the library I read Witch Hat Atelier Volume 9 and Volume 10 by Kamome Shirahama, and this is a high fantasy manga series that just keeps getting more and more interesting. I really like the world building, each volume adds something, and I love the art. There's some great panel works in these ones, especially I think it was in Volume 9 when the girls arrived at this festival. It had some great panels. So this is about these young girls who study to be witches, and then there's also the great big witch world and the adults and all sorts of politics going on. And I really like the darker tones and the questions of morality that this series keeps raising. There's also more political players added in these volumes. And mostly at the moment, I'm currently interested in what the brimmed hats want. So they're like this very shady antagonists that we don't yet know much about or know their motives, and they're very mysterious. I want to know more about them. There wasn't that much Keyfree in these two. It's the girl's teacher in these volumes, but I'm also always interested in him. I think I liked Volume 9 a bit more than Volume 10. Volume 10 maybe felt more like setting up future stuff, and I definitely can't wait for Volume 11. So that was actually all I read in March, so let's move on to the receipts. Did I finish a book for my Finish 5 series challenge? No. Did I finish a book for the buzzword reading challenge? Yes. So the word for March was secrets. And I actually have no physical books with the word secret in them. And I plan to use physical books when I can for this challenge. So since I didn't have any, I used an ebook for this. And I used His Secret Illuminations by Scarlett Gale, which I read in February, which I talked in my previous reads and receipts. And I also started listening to the Night Vale novel, The Faceless Old Woman Who Secretly Lives in Your Home by Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Cranor. I didn't finish it because I'm really slow at listening to audiobooks. At least the prompt made me start listening to this, because otherwise I needed the boost. Otherwise it would have just stayed on my phone unread. Then I also had February's prompt, the verbs that I hadn't done. I did start reading Taken at the Flood by Agatha Christie in March, but I didn't finish it. I'm currently finishing it. I think I can finish it today. Let's move on to the book haul part. So in March I bought 2 ebooks from sales. So I bought The Hands of the Emperor by Victoria Goddard, which is a high fantasy romance story that I've been meaning to read for a while now, but it is 1,000 pages long, like literally. So it's always been a bit of a pricey ebook. So when it was on sale, I grabbed it because I haven't noticed it being on sale before. The entire time it has been on my wish list. I don't know when I actually have the time to dedicate to reading it, but now I own it. And I also bought Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk, which is a historical fantasy novella. I don't know much about it, but I love C.L. Polk. And now some statistics. In March I read 8 books, which was 977 pages. And that's quite a low page count for me. I don't actually remember when I've last gone under 1,000 pages in a month. Since this was the end of the quarter, I also have some quarterly stats. So from January to March, I read 33 books. From the books that I read, 52% were library books, 21% were ebooks that I bought before this year, 15% were books that I purchased this year, and 9% were physical books from my shelf. The last 3% or one book was a short story that was freely available online. So all this means that my current physical TBR number is still 61 books. It didn't move, I didn't buy or read a physical book in March. Let's hope I will do better in April, but that's all from me for now, and I'll see you in my next video.